Hi folks, today I wanted to do something a little bit different, and instead of looking at an Excel function or a way we can model things, I'm going to look across the function keys at the top of the keyboard, F1 up to F12. I tried recording a version of this a couple of days ago and the video got way too long, so if this feels like quite a quick walkthrough, then that's why. Let's get started. The first function key is F1, and it's a little bit of a joke because a lot of people you might find have actually removed the F1 key altogether. There's a picture of my keyboard on the screen and I have it removed. And that's because it sits right between escape and F2, which are both really commonly used, and it means that F1 can get hit accidentally. If I do press F1, it brings up the help menu. So occasionally that will be useful, but often you hit that key by mistake and it just slows you down. F1 does do a couple of useful things though. Control F1 will hide the ribbon, and again will unhide it. Control Shift F1 goes even further and brings us into this sort of full screen view. I like that particularly when just working on a laptop screen. It gives more of that screen real estate for the model itself. If I jump over to a sheet with some numbers on it, Alt F1 will create a chart from the range that my active cell was in. Alt Shift F1 will insert a new worksheet. F2 is one of the most used function keys for me. Pressing F2 on a formula brings you into edit mode. You can see at the bottom left of my screen the word edit. So my cursor is in the formula, and if I use the arrow keys, I navigate around the formula. If I want to extend my formula by adding something else, if I press F2 again, you'll see the word in the corner changes to enter. So now if I use the arrow keys, it's allowing me to add to my formula. My arrow keys are moving me around the sheet instead of around the formula itself. F2 does a few other things that I didn't know about. It can print, save as, and open, all just using different Control Shift Alt combinations. So Control F2 will print, Alt F2 will save as, Alt Shift F2 will just save, and Control Alt F2 will open up the Open dialog box. Shift F2 allows you to enter a note onto a cell, and Control Shift F2 allows you to start a mention or a comment in a more 365 world of comments. F3, most of its functions are to do with named ranges. If you're typing a formula and you know there's a named range but you can't remember what it is, you can press F3 and it brings up a list of your named ranges. You can find the one you want and press OK, and that'll paste it into your formula. Control F3 opens up the name manager. Alt F3 is one I didn't know about, and I didn't think there was a shortcut for this. If I want to name this cell, I would normally come and click on the name box using the mouse, but Alt F3 brings me up into the name box, and I can type my new name into the name box, and I can type my new name, press enter. So that's a really handy one. Shift F3 opens up the function dialog box. Control Shift F3 allows you to create a name from selection. So that's the same as this option here on the ribbon, and you can see in the screen tip there, Control Shift F3 is called out as the shortcut. Control Alt F3 allows you to create a new name in a slightly different way, and here we can see the formula that defines it. F4 is probably the other most used function key. And even without using Control, Shift and Alt, it can do three really useful things. So the first one you may well know about. If I'm typing a formula and I get to my reference, pressing F4 will cycle through the relative and absolute references, so moving those dollar signs around. If I need to add something from another sheet, I can I can put in my plus, go and navigate to the other sheet, and then if I press plus again, now I want to continue typing on my if sheet here, but instead of navigating back to it with the mouse or the keyboard, I can just press F4 and it brings me back to the formula I'm typing. I can finish my formula and press enter. Really useful if you've got a big model with lots and lots of sheets. It can just bring you back to the sheet you're writing your formula on. The last one that F4 does on its own, now we all know Control Z is undo, Control Y is redo, and F4 is very similar to redo. If I just format a cell, and I go to another cell and press F4, it will keep doing that same action over and over again. One good use is if you're pasting values or pasting formatting, you can paste the formatting and then go to another area and press F4 and it'll paste that formatting again. You don't need to go back into your paste special. Shift F4 and Control Shift F4 do something very similar, just in different orders. So if I want to find, say, the word interest, and I come out of the find window, Shift F4 will continue to find in a downward direction all the cells that contain interest. Control Shift F4 does the same by going up. Now the next two I'm not going to touch because it'll close things. Control F4 closes the active window that you're in. Alt F4 closes the program that you're in. On to F5. F5 opens up the Go To dialog box, so you can jump to any of your named ranges. Particularly useful here is the Go To Special, where you can select constants, formulas, blanks, anything like that, which can be really powerful depending on what you're doing. Shift F5 opens the Find and Replace window. Control F5 restores the size of your window, and then obviously I can maximize it again. F6 is a strange one, not one that I've ever used, but it cycles through selectable parts of Excel. So if I press it once, it's really hard to see. I've now selected the tab. If I press it again, it's jumped to calculate. Again, it's jumped up to the ribbon, and then it's back onto the sheet. When it's on any of those things, I can use the arrow keys to select any of the items in that area and get back to where I started. Shift F6 does the same, but in the opposite order. Control F6 cycles through open Excel workbooks. So I've got two dummy workbooks here, book 3, my main model, book 2, my main model, book 3. So it just allows you to select the different Excel files you've got open. And Control Shift F6 does the same, but in the opposite order. F7, quite a common one if you're writing things in Word, is a spell check. So if you're producing maybe a user guide or some instructions within a model, F7 on that, and it'll run the spell check. Shift F7 opens the thesaurus for the words in the cell you have selected. Alt Shift F7 opens up the translator. So budget into French is budget. You can select lots of different languages there. F8 can be used to turn on extend selection mode. You'll see that at the bottom of the screen. And it means that using the arrow keys and not holding shift as you would normally, you can select a range of cells. Shift F8 adds on the add to selection mode, and so I can now select multiple non-contiguous ranges without having to use any of the keyboard. Alt F8 opens up your macro menu so you can run or edit any of your macros. F9 is a really useful one. If your model is particularly big and with a lot of functions and calculations, it might be quite slow. So bringing on manual calculate mode It means that every time you change a cell, you don't have to wait for the full model to calculate. But it does mean that when you change something, the dependent cells don't change until you press F9. So F9 calculates a model that's in manual mode. The other uses of F9 are all in the same theme. Shift F9 will calculate just the sheet you're on. Control Alt F9 calculates everything, all worksheets in all open workbooks. And then lastly, the only shortcut I know that needs Control Alt and Shift, with F9, it forces a full recheck of dependent cells and calculates everything. So if you've got a big model, the results are not showing what you'd expect, and you think everything is correct, then Control Alt Shift F9, give it a few seconds to kick in, because sometimes it looks like it's not doing anything. Let that calculate, and it should hopefully fix some of your problems. F10 brings up the key letters, so we can navigate the ribbon that way. Shift F10 is like right-clicking, opens up the context menu. Control F10 maximizes and then restores the window. F11, much like we saw earlier, creates an auto chart, but this time puts it on its own sheet instead of within the active worksheet. Shift F11 creates a new worksheet. Alt F11 toggles between the Visual Basic editor and your Excel. Alt Shift F11 would do the same with the Microsoft Script editor. Finally, F12. F12 on its own opens the Save As dialog, and much like F2, it can also save, open and print. Shift F12 to save, Control F12 to open, Control Shift F12 brings up the print menu. So that's it. A look along the function keys. I definitely learned a couple of new ones. I hope you guys have too. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below and I'll look forward to answering those. Otherwise, have a great day.